What is up, guys, and welcome back. This past week, my friends and I were able to get our third play session in for this game, and it went really well. We got all the way up until January of 1941, so that's where we're going to be starting in our next play session. So this video is just going to be another recap, our third recap of the game here, show you how it's going. The Axis are right in the middle of their early game power spike, but the Allies are starting to throw some cash around, as are the Comintern, so things are starting to get hot. In terms of our next play session, I'm going to be out of town Thursday through Monday, so that next play session is probably going to happen sometime next week, if not the weekend after this coming weekend. So be on the lookout for that. Let's go. All right, as per turn order, we're going to start here in Germany. And the Germans only had 2 turns because we actually started with the Soviet turn in July of 1939. So only 2 turns since we last saw them. So the Germans have only taken new territory in the form of Bulgaria and Romania. They just aligned those 2 countries. Other than that, Germany's been focusing on some naval and air force buildup as well as a little bit of infantry and getting some more mechanized infantry out there to replace the mechs that they lost in taking France. So looking over here at the eastern buildup, you see that the Germans have a significant number of tanks here, as well as many other auxiliary units. Looks like we've got 10 medium armors with about 7 mechs, 3 fighters, attack bomber, as well as some artillery and other auxiliary ground forces like infantry and that free motorized from Romania. Looking over here on the western front, the Germans have simply been building just a few infantry per turn, maybe not as much as they've needed to, but they also bought 2 strategic bombers, as well as they've been pumping out subs. They've got 7 subs on the board right now, which are surprisingly uncontested in the Atlantic at the moment. British pulled a fast one on the Germans here at the end of 1940. With the Germans expecting these light carriers to head out into the Atlantic to take care of the sub problem, the Germans tried an amphibious landing into Western Germany, which I think had its intended effect. The Germans here lost 3 infantry, their transport plane, and a strategic bomber, so 2 planes gone out of the Luftwaffe, which hurts for the Germans. But the jury's still out on that one, because while they did take out that Strat bomber and the transport plane, these 2 escort carriers were not taking care of the German sub problem in the Atlantic. And so the Germans were able to get, I think, $15 off the British last turn, plus they're going to have 2 more subs and another round of uncontested rating, which I think is going to take even more off this turn, hopefully, because the British did not get their advanced anti-sub warfare tech roll, so they're still undefended out here on these convoy lines. So we'll see how it turns out. The Germans certainly weren't expecting it, so we'll see how it works in the end. We had some major naval moves up here between the Germans and the British. If you'll recall from the last recap video, the British had I'd say a medium-sized force sitting here in the English Channel to protect their waters, and the Germans brought their entire air force as well as this new navy that they had won from the French out there to decimate it. It was actually one of the most lopsided rolls I've ever seen. I think the Germans got 10 hits on the first round, and the English responded with 1 or 2. So it was incredibly lopsided. The British fleet was completely wiped out. But on the very next turn, the entirety of the rest of the British Royal Navy arrived to return the favor. The German Air Force was not able to join the fight, and so the limited surface ships that the Germans had were in turn wiped out, as they had done to the English. So, jury's still out on this one. As the German player, I'm not sure how I feel about it. Obviously it sucks to not have a German surface navy, especially with that Russian fleet in there, but we'll see how it goes. I think the big thing to take away from this is that there is now no British presence in the Mediterranean. The entire British Royal Navy is sitting in the English Channel right now. So the Italians, who we will talk about in a little bit, as well as the Vichy French, are now somewhat uncontested in the Mediterranean for now. The Americans have been building up on the East Coast a lot, so they're going to be here in 3 or 4 turns. We'll talk about them here at the end on their turn. But so right now the German Navy consists of 7 subs and 1 coastal sub way up there. In terms of the Spanish, the nationalists were able to finish the Spanish Civil War with a mild force left behind, no air force, nothing to write home about, so a potential Allied landing could come, and that might be a good idea for them because there's not much defending Spain right now. Only 4 mounted infantry and 2 artillery there in Spain. For the Vichy, it's a little bit different out here. The Vichy started with Morocco, but the Free French quickly took it. So the Vichy got a transport from Germany and quickly landed here in Tunisia. The Free French chose northern Algeria as their capital. So the Vichy then moved their robust navy down here to blockade that port. So the Free French cannot receive any lend-lease from their American friends. Things are pretty close in France right now. That Vichy Navy really, really is a big help. We've also got 3 Vichy subs out here in the Indian Ocean. Moving on to our good friends, the Soviets. Out here on the eastern front of the Germans, we are still just the best of friends out here on the eastern front. You can see the Soviets are starting to build up on that front. I'm not sure why the Germans would never attack their good friends, the Russians. Those are 10 friendly tanks, I assure you that, Matthew. In terms of Russian exploits, the Russian player decided to nullify the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and fully invade Finland, and that was a huge success. The Finnish got 0 hits on the attack and defended very poorly, as well as they've now taken the majority of the Middle East, and the Middle Eastern defenses also performed very poorly. I think 1 casualty was suffered by the Russians in this entire sequence of attacks. So the Russians are now up to 9 IPPs worth of neutral territory, with a total of 6 victory points worth of neutral territory as well. 6 territories with IPP values outside of home country. Over here on the eastern part of Russia, he's actually withdrawn a couple of infantry since the last time we've seen him, so it's very lightly defended there on the front. But of course, as you can see, the Japanese also don't have much buildup. I want to take a second here to look at how the Soviet player seems to be setting up his defense, because I know that'd be of some interest to you viewers. Looking here, we've got the middle part completely undefended here, with large concentrations of infantry sitting here in northern Belarusia and southern Ukraine, as well as looks like to be a medium counterattack force in each of Kiev and Smolensk, as well as scattered infantry along the back. Not much defense behind this front line. Obviously, the Soviets haven't had much money, so the Germans just took Romania here on this last turn, so this is really the first turn that the Soviets have had any meaningful income. I believe they've got around $40 in the bank right now, so we'll see what they do with that with their first meaningful purchase. And from where the Germans are at here, it looks like they can go either direction with a possible push into Russia, as I said, as the German player, and with the Americans heavily building up in the Atlantic. I'm not sure what my plan of action for Russia is going to be yet. Moving on to Japan, we will start here with China. As you can see, China is now almost fully Japanese, with the KMT only possessing Tibet here and Xinjiang. Now the KMT have $1 in the bank, as well as all potential avenues of lend-lease have been cut. So unless the Comintern want to build a rail right here to potentially allow some lend-lease to get there into the KMT, they are surrounded and alone for now, with a sizable Japanese force coming up on them. We've got 15 infantry here, as well as 2 mountains, 4 more infantry, a couple of motorized, and a cavalry coming in, as well as 2 fighters down here. The rest of the Japanese Air Force is otherwise indisposed, and I'll show you just why. Because here on our last turn, the Japanese very successfully invaded the Dutch East Indies. The attacks went very well. The Japanese lost 1 torpedo boat destroyer and 1 SNLF. That was it. They took a hit down here in Java, which was the most dicey of the battles, but everything turned out well. So the Japanese have boosted their income by 9, as well as owning all of the income within China. So the Japanese, when they do happen to get to war with a major power, will have most of their wartime bonus income already wrapped up before war even starts. So that is a good sign for the Japanese. Their pre-war power spike has been going swimmingly, I think. But we'll see how it goes. They've got a lot of enemies. The FEC have left their fleet here outside of India, menacingly. And as you'll recall from the last overview video, the Anzac also have a pretty sizable fleet. So, Japanese looking good for now, but obviously that is subject to change at a moment's notice, as I'm sure is familiar to all of you viewers. Up next, we've got the Commonwealth, and I already mentioned a lot about Great Britain up here. As I said, the entire British Royal Navy is now sitting in these sections on the western coast of the German Empire. They lost 4 infantry on an amphibious assault, but they're now up to 4 transports here within range of Germany, as well as sitting on 7 infantry within London and 3 fighters. They've got a very sizable air force, courtesy of the Americans. So we'll see if they attempt another amphibious landing here in the next turn. Status quo in Gibraltar, that happened early. It's stayed the same since. Moving on to Africa, status quo from the last overview. It seems the British have been putting the majority of their money into the defense of Great Britain. Coming over here to the FEC. The FEC have been just pumping out Gurkhas like nobody's business. Calcutta is the same that we last saw at 5 infantry and a fighter, as well as that Free French infantry. But now they've got 5 Gurkhas on the board with more infantry spread throughout, and they're starting to look pretty strong there in Burma. Down to our good friends, the Aussies. The only differences from our last overview is they've now got infantry down here, as well as this Anzac fighter, which could be a very, very good tool for them here in the future. We're going to skip right over the Free French because I talked about them pretty much with the Vichy. They've still got $2 up here, as well as $1 sitting in Cameroon. Transport and infantry over here, and then a mountain infantry and that French Foreign Legion that they won sitting in Algeria. Up next are the Italians. Italians are not at war yet. Here at the outset of 1941. But they have made some pretty interesting moves. We've got a brand new battleship down from the last time, so now we're up to 3 battleships, as well as being able to drop this fleet carrier here on their last turn. So we've now got 4 capital ships for the Italians in the Mediterranean, compared to the 0 of the British Royal Navy, who, as I've mentioned, has withdrawn to the English Channel. As well, the Italians have been making some interesting moves. We've now got 3 Marines on the board, as well as 2 transports available to them. So we'll see what they're planning for those guys. And that's all I got for the Italians. They've just been building up slowly. They only get $10 a turn, so slowly but surely they've been building up their forces. And finally, on to the Americans. The Americans still have this huge, fully kitted 2-carrier, 2-battleship fleet with an escort of 2 heavy cruisers, a light cruiser, 3 destroyers, and 3 transports. So that's starting to look very, very nasty for the Germans, as well as a medium bomber and 2 infantry in there. So a little bit light on the ground troops, but we all know the Americans are going to have no problems building those ground troops when the time comes. They have hit the income where they're able to escort within 3 sea zones of home territory. They have decided not to do so for the time being with these German subs within range, but no movement from the Americans up to this point. Simply building and building and looking very, very menacing for the Germans. However, in some poor news for our friends, the Imperial Japanese, it seems the Americans have decided to show some love out here in the Pacific, dropping 3 infantry and 2 fighters into San Francisco on this last turn, as well as dropping 2 new fleet carriers onto the build queue. So the Americans are starting to make some moves, starting to build up. They have hit the income level where they can move their fleet within the Pacific, ending adjacent to U.S. territories. That's only been for 1 turn, and they have chosen not to do so at this time. So we'll see what happens. Philippines, still the same, no new militia. That fleet is still out there. All right, we've finally had some tech finished. The Soviets are absolutely killing it. They've already got 3 finished. 3 important ones, heavy bombers and advanced artillery, as well as wartime income, ready for them when the time is right. So that has been excellent for the Russians. The Germans have had some tough rolls. They've got 4 here in stage 3, only 1 finished, but it is the important one that we all love, wartime economy. Of course, the British have finished their wartime economy as well, so that cancels out a bit. The British are real close here on advanced anti-sub warfare. I bet they're going to be very, very happy when that is finished. The poor Italians have hit 3 rolls in the entire game. So they've had 9 rolls this game. They are 3 for 9 on a 50% roll, so that's some bad odds if you ask me, but who am I? Just the Italian player, so obviously I'm biased. In other news, the Americans got strategic rockets. We're lucky enough to get that one out of the way early so they can start to get that other juicy tech that they so desperately want. That improved construction is going to be huge for them. I know the Japanese wish they were up there. The Japanese have been having a tough tactic game as well. They've been stuck at stage 2 for a long time on those 2, wartime economy and improved construction. And taking a quick peek here at the income chart, the Germans are doing well out of 48. This last turn with their bonus income and their wartime economy roll, we actually have $71 in the bank. We rolled an 11 on a wartime economy, so the Germans have some cash to throw around. But the Americans are getting up here as well. They're at 48 of the requisite 63 to get to wartime. So we're probably looking at 2 or 3 turns until the Americans are in the war. Scary stuff for the Axis powers. The Russians are at 25. They've had 2 barrel rolls as well as the 1 free roll from the Germans taking Romania, and they've gotten up to 25, so they're about halfway to their requisite 46. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. The Axis early power spike is starting to hit its peak, and we're going to start seeing things swing back in favor of the Allied forces and Comintern. So it's going to start getting really fun here, and I'm super excited to play again. This game is awesome. All right, love you guys. See you later.